There is something powerful about stories that stand the test of time. They shape us. They inspire us. They linger in our minds long after the credits roll. And for decades, Star Wars was one of those stories. It was not just another sci-fi adventure. It was a myth, a legend, a universe so rich with meaning that it became a cultural touchstone for generations. But something changed along the way. Sequels are supposed to build on what came before. They are supposed to take the foundation of a great story and push it further, challenge it, evolve it. They are not supposed to just repeat it. But when we look at episodes 7, 8, and 9, that is exactly what we see. A story that does not move forward. A story that circles back. A story that tries to be something we have already seen instead of becoming something new. It is not just about similarities. Of course, all Star Wars films share common themes. That is not the issue. The issue is that the sequels do not just borrow ideas. They borrow entire storylines, entire character arcs, entire emotional beats, and expect us not to notice. It is the same journey, the same rise and fall, the same conflicts wearing different names. And when you start to really break it down, it becomes painfully obvious. This is not evolution. It is repetition. This is not a continuation of a beloved saga. It is a remake disguised as a sequel. And the worst part is, it did not have to be this way. The galaxy far, far away is limitless in its potential. There were infinite paths the sequels could have taken. New heroes, new struggles, new destinies. But instead, we got a retelling. A story that fears the unknown so much that it clings to the past like a crutch. And that is where the real disappointment lies. Because Star Wars was never supposed to be about looking backward. It was about adventure, about discovery, about stepping into the unknown and forging something new. But the sequels did not forge anything. They copied, they rebranded, they repeated. And today, we are going to break down exactly how and why. You ever sit through something and feel like you have already experienced it before? Like watching a movie and realizing you know exactly where it is going before it even happens? That is what episodes 7, 8, and 9 feel like. They are not sequels in the true sense. They are reflections of the past. Remixes of what we have already seen. There is this undeniable sense of repetition. Like the entire structure of the original trilogy was placed on a loop and handed back to us with new faces, but the same exact beats. A young protagonist from a desert planet. A wise mentor figure who does not last. An evil empire under a different name. A massive world-ending weapon that must be destroyed. The familiarity is overwhelming. And the worst part is that it is not just a matter of themes being revisited. It is entire story arcs being recycled. Instead of moving forward, the sequel trilogy chooses to circle back. The Empire falls, but it is replaced with the First Order. The Rebellion wins, but now it is just called the Resistance. It is not a new chapter in the saga. It is a reboot disguised as a continuation. The most obvious offender is The Force Awakens. This was the film that was supposed to kick off an entirely new era of Star Wars. Instead, what we got was a repackaged version of A New Hope. The same setup, the same stakes, the same structure. And the worst part, it worked. Nostalgia covered up the cracks, at least at first. We start on a desert planet again. Only this time it is not Tatooine, it is Jakku. But does it really matter what it is called, when it serves the same exact purpose? A barren wasteland, where a lonely dreamer is waiting for something more. Rey is introduced to us in a way that mirrors Luke Skywalker almost too perfectly. She stares at the vastness of the horizon, longing for something greater. It is almost poetic how much it mirrors A New Hope. But then it goes further. Rey does not just live in a desert. She stumbles upon a droid carrying vital information that kicks off the entire adventure. Just like Luke found R2-D2 carrying the Death Star plans, Rey finds BB-8, holding the map to Luke himself. The pattern is impossible to ignore. They did not try to build something new. They just swapped out the names and called it a new story. And of course, she cannot do this alone. So in steps the reluctant mentor. Not Obi-Wan Kenobi this time, but Han Solo. And what is his fate? The same as Obi-Wan's. A tragic end at the hands of the new villain. Instead of Darth Vader striking down his old master, we get Kylo Ren cutting down his own father. The emotional impact is strong, but only if you do not realize how blatantly it mirrors the past. It is like The Force Awakens was crafted with a checklist. Hero from the desert. Check. Mentor who dies early. Check. Evil empire with a new name. Check. You've got a planet-destroying weapon that must be stopped. Check. A manufactured echo of the original trilogy, made to disguise the lack of originality. But deep down, it is just The Empire Strikes Back all over again. The structure is eerily similar. A divided story. A young Force-sensitive protagonist seeking out a reluctant master. A desperate rebellion being hunted down by an unstoppable enemy. We have seen all of this before. Rey goes to another place to find Luke, just like Luke went to Dagobah to find Yoda. The difference is that Luke, in this version, has become the disillusioned teacher who refuses to help. A subversion of expectations, they say. But is it really when it still follows the same pattern? A student seeking guidance from a hermit master who has lost faith in the Force? That is the same story told in a different tone. Meanwhile, the Resistance is being hunted down by the First Order in a slow, desperate chase across space. A ragtag group of heroes trying to escape an overwhelming force. The sense of doom. The hopelessness. It is all reminiscent of the rebellion fleeing the Empire in The Empire Strikes Back. The parallels are glaring. The same desperation. The same feeling of being outmatched. It is the same struggle with a new coat of paint. And then, of course, we have the big reveal. Except this time, there is no shocking twist. No true answer to who Rey is. No deeper meaning behind Snoke. Instead, The Last Jedi tries to convince us that none of it matters. But that is just another trick. Another way to make us think it is doing something bold, when in reality, it is just playing within the same sandbox. Same conflicts. Same power struggles. Same story. Then we get the rise of Skywalker. And if The Force Awakens was a rehash of A New Hope and The Last Jedi pretended to be different while mirroring The Empire Strikes Back, then this one is Return of the Jedi. Every single major beat is lifted from the past. It is almost shameless how much it tries to be a grand finale without actually earning it. Palpatine is back, somehow. And just like in Return of the Jedi, the final battle is split into 3 parts. A ground battle, a space battle, and an emotional showdown between the hero and the villain. It is the exact same structure. Instead of Endor, we have Exegol. Instead of the Death Star, we have a fleet of Star Destroyers with planet-killing weapons. Instead of Luke fighting Vader to redeem him, we have Rey facing Kylo Ren and trying to turn him back to the light. The pieces are rearranged, but the puzzle is the same. Even the idea of redemption is handled in the same way. Darth Vader had his moment of clarity when he chose to turn against the Emperor, and now Kylo Ren has his. He throws away his dark persona, just in time to help defeat Palpatine. It is the same arc, just with a different face. And the worst part is that it does not feel earned. It is rushed, forced, done. Because the original trilogy did it, and not because it made sense for the character. The cycle is exhausting. The Empire was defeated, yet here we are with the First Order taking its place. The Sith were vanquished, yet somehow Palpatine returns. The Jedi were supposed to be rebuilt, yet Luke fails, disappears, and nothing truly changes. It is like the victory in Return of the Jedi never even mattered. The past was erased, so the franchise could start over, but with the same exact blueprint. And what makes it worse is how obvious the retreading is. When Luke blew up the Death Star, it was a moment of triumph that built up across the entire movie. In The Force Awakens, Starkiller Base is destroyed in a rushed sequence that mirrors the original but lacks any of the tension. When Rey fights Kylo Ren for the first time, it is not earned. It does not feel like the culmination of a journey. It feels like the script needed a climactic lightsaber duel, so they just threw one in. Nothing is organic. Nothing feels like it is happening because the story naturally led there. It all feels like an echo of the original trilogy, designed to trigger nostalgia rather than tell something meaningful. And that is the real problem. These movies do not continue the story, they just repeat it. And in doing so, they rob the original trilogy of its lasting impact. It is not just the plot points that are recycled. It is the themes, the arcs, the emotions. Even the characters themselves feel like reflections rather than real people. Rey is Luke without the depth. Kylo Ren is Vader without the mystique. Finn could have been something new, but he is sidelined before he even gets the chance. Rey's journey is supposed to be about self-discovery, but the film rushes through it with a checklist approach. She learns about the Force without struggle. She becomes a Jedi without failure. She defeats her enemy without sacrifice. Luke's journey was about perseverance, about overcoming his own doubts and fears. Rey's journey is about being told she is special until she believes it. It does not resonate the same way. And Kylo Ren, a character with so much potential, yet trapped in the shadow of Darth Vader. They try to make him conflicted, but his arc lacks the weight of Vader's redemption. Anakin's fall to the dark side was a tragedy that built across multiple films. Kylo's feels like a moody teenager who cannot decide what he wants. By the time he turns back to the light, it is not a moment of emotional weight, it is an obligation. Something the script needed to happen because it happened before. Even the supporting cast feels like afterthoughts. Poe is just Han Solo without the complexity. Finn starts with an original idea but is quickly thrown aside. And then there is Palpatine, a character who is dead, who had no reason to return. Yet is resurrected simply because the sequels could not come up with their own villain. Everything is a reflection, a hollow imitation of something that was once great. And now, years later, what do we have to show for it? The sequel trilogy has come and gone, and yet it left no lasting mark, no deeper impact, no true identity of its own. When people look back at the Star Wars saga, they see the original trilogy as legendary, the prequels as flawed but unique, and the sequels as just more of the same. That is the real tragedy of these films. They were supposed to push the story forward, but they kept looking backward. They were meant to introduce a new generation to Star Wars, but instead, they just repackaged what came before. And the worst part is, they did not even do it as well. They took the structure, but not the heart, the imagery, but not the meaning, the spectacle, but not the soul. Every trilogy before had its own distinct feel. The originals were the foundation, the hero's journey done right. The prequels were about politics, the fall of a hero, the rise of an empire. But the sequels, they do not have that. They are just trying to be the originals again, but without the understanding of what made them work. And when all is said and done, that is why these films will never stand the test of time the same way. Because a copy, no matter how well made, is never as powerful as the original. And a story that refuses to move forward is just doomed to repeat itself over and over again. So here we are, a trilogy that had everything going for it. The legacy, the fan base, the opportunity to do something incredible. And what did we get? A retread, a remix, a repeat of what we had already seen, but with less meaning, less weight, less purpose. There was a time when Star Wars was about innovation, about pushing the boundaries of storytelling and filmmaking, about creating something new that could inspire generations. But the sequels were not about that. They were about playing it safe, about relying on nostalgia instead of creating new memories, about selling the past instead of embracing the future. And that is the biggest disappointment of all. These movies were not terrible because they were different. They were terrible because they were the same, because they lacked the courage to truly break new ground, because they thought repeating what came before was enough. But it was not. It never was. So what do we do now? We remember what made Star Wars special in the first place. We learn from the mistakes. We demand better, because Star Wars is more than just a cycle of repetition. It is about hope, about adventure, about the power of storytelling to transport us to new worlds. And maybe, just maybe, one day we will get a story that truly understands that again. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this breakdown, be sure to subscribe to Critical Analysis Hub for deep dives into the Star Wars movies, and check out Critical Analysis Hub Plus for case studies on Star Wars shows. Also, if you want to rep the fandom in style, check out the bio for awesome Star Wars Legos and Funko Pops. May the Force be with you. I'll see you in the next one.